Everyone, welcome to the Black Podcast. We're so glad that you're here. Please make sure that you share this video. If you're on either Facebook or YouTube Live, please make sure that you share. Every week, we're making sure that we have guests here that's going to help you grow, help our community grow, giving us knowledge. Knowledge is power. So we're just so excited about our new guests. I am your host, one of your hosts, Dr. Sherelle Hobson, and I'm a student athlete resilience coach. And I really enjoy and very passionate about being productive in the Black community, in particular with our young Black males who are active in athletics, and then just in the educational system as far as leadership. I had the honor of partnering with Mr. Streak here.
Yes, and I'm just always honored to be in the presence of other individuals that see the potential and the future of our young men, specifically our young men of color, because so many have been trapped in a system of repetition, of perpetuation of negative cycles throughout the generations. But ever so often, you find people that you can link onto that have a similar vision, that see a better future, and when we can bring those voices together and better inform the society, better inform those who are watching us, who are listening to us, we can make so much more of an impact. So the young lady that we have with us today, our guest today, when I saw her content, she was brought to me by Dr. Sherelle Hobson. I saw her content, I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to hear her story, to hear how she birthed this desire to be a warrior in this space. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead and pull back the curtains. Miss Sylvia Duckworth, how are you today?
Oh, I'm fine. I think your audience is going to be surprised when they see me that I'm not really a young lady.
Sure.
Although I loved hearing those words. I haven't heard them in a few years, so bring it on.
Yes, definitely. Well, we are just thrilled for you to share your wisdom with us, because there's so many people who will see the title of our podcast and just make assumptions. But we have to realize that we need the collective. We need the understanding of the collective. We need the perspectives of the collective to really be able to push our culture forward. So, just to kind of get us started, we love to hear, what are the backgrounds? What is the background? Who is Sylvia Duckworth, and where was all this beautifulness just birthed from? Like, take us back to where you're from, where you were born and raised, and kind of who developed or what developed you into the young woman that you are today.
For sure. I just want to say that I'm truly honored that you invited me on your show. I hope I have something to offer the audience. I'm really new at this social justice realm, really just having become interested in it in the past year since the George Floyd death. But I'll get into that as the interview progresses. But just to say that I am no expert by any means in this area, but maybe that might be of interest to your audience as well, as how someone does get involved and interested in this. But so I'm a retired teacher, and I live in Canada, in Toronto, Canada, and I was teaching for more than 32 years, mostly in the elementary divisions, so grades 3, 4, and 5. And I was teaching in a boys-only environment. So in Toronto, we have public schools and private schools, and I was teaching in a private school, a very privileged kind of environment. And I was teaching French. So in Canada, we have 2 official languages. We have English and French. And so there are a lot of French teachers. And we were, Dr. H and I were talking just before. And we both have backgrounds in physical and health education. I actually went to university hoping I'd become a phys ed teacher. And when I graduated, there were no phys ed jobs. So I ended up teaching French, and I haven't looked back. I really enjoyed it. So that's a bit about me and my professional background. And then, so I was born 61 years ago in New Brunswick, which is a province just next, well, actually it's an eastern province. So it's on the East Coast. It's considered the Maritimes in Canada. And I moved to Toronto when I was little. I was a baby. So I really consider myself from Toronto. And I have an identical twin, and she also lives in Toronto, and she's a lawyer. and I'm the teacher of the family. It's always good to have a lawyer in the family. So that's
Oh.
where, that's where it all began.
Awesome. So I know that you said that, I guess this awareness of social justice started to come forth when we looked at the George Floyd, incident all over the world. If you can explain to me or explain to us, what was your initial thought? Like, because prior to that, you are an artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was your art based on prior to George Floyd? And then what was that transition like when you were like, okay, I'm no longer going to focus on that. I'm now doing this. If you can, talk about where your art was in the beginning and then how that transition happened.
Yeah, really good question. Well, if you look at my Instagram feed prior to a year ago, you would see a couple of things. You would see lots of personal images, like me and my family traveling, and a yummy meal I had, and some outfit that I was wearing, or you might see some posts related to education. I do something called sketchnoting. I've written 2 books on sketchnoting, and sketchnoting is basically a way of taking notes. It's called visual note taking also, and it's a way of combining doodles with words. So this is something that I love doing, and I've been instructing teachers and students across the world. Actually, before COVID hit, I was doing lots of conferences all around the world on sketchnoting. And so you would see posts also related to sketchnoting and, the build up to selling my books, the marketing I was doing and stuff. And then the George Floyd death happened, and all of a sudden I realized like everything I'd been posting about was so trivial compared to the issues that are at stake now and the issues that really have to be talked about. And I kind of felt foolish about the things that I was posting before, like in the middle of this crisis, how do people carry on with life as if nothing happened? And I know a lot of influencers, social media influencers, especially white ones, that's what they do. They just continue like nothing happened, and it boggles my mind. So that was part of my journey. And I also happened to befriend other artists on Instagram who are also posting wonderful art related to social justice. And in fact, the audience listening, if you go to my link tree in my bio on Instagram, so my Instagram handle is @Sylvia Duckworth. And I'm going to say about 10 items down, you're going to see a post by Kim Sara. And she created this whole journal, not a journal. It's an Instagram. I forget what it is. It's not a newsletter, but it's a. Can you guys help me out here? It's one of those Instagram features. It's not. I can go on Instagram and look at it. But anyway,
a reel.
Sorry.
Is it the Instagram reel?
No, it's not a reel. It's a
TV.
No. It's where you can write like a long blog post. You can write a newsletter. Anyway, it's a link to her where she compiled all of the artists, the social justice artists, that we've created this community. We also have this chat on Instagram. So we're constantly chatting to each other about issues. And when someone posts something, they'll post it in our chat on Instagram, and then we can help amplify everyone's message. And then we bounce ideas off each other. And just yesterday, actually, one of the artists said, I need help, friends, because someone has taken my art and they're putting it on t-shirts and they're selling it. And there's a wonderful artist, and her name was Meg. And so we all got on our Instagram feeds and like blasted this particular account that was doing this and reported it. And all of our followers were reporting it. And eventually the account closed their store down. So it all worked out. So, but I just mentioned that like as we give each other that kind of support on a daily basis, which is wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you talk about that whole experience or that transition of, because prior to George Floyd, there was so many others, right? And like you
For
said, like,
sure.
it was just like maybe just not as, exposed more to the media so
Graphic.
you can really see. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So if you can just elaborate more on just that experience for you, like what was your conversation like, even with your family, where it's like your whole mindset changed? Was it something that you discussed with people, like, with your spouse saying like, hey, like, I can't believe, or with your friends, did you feel like you were just was you in your own space when you were deciding to make this transition? Like, what was that conversation like with your circle of support and
Mm-hmm.
family?
Mm-hmm. I think we all knew that violence, particularly against Black men, was an issue, but me and my white friends and my white family didn't realize how bad it was until we actually saw that video. Like you realize it's an issue, but you don't know how bad it is until you actually see a video like that. And so I know trust me, my Black friends are like, what took you so long to believe us and how bad it was? And I have no answer for that. I guess it's because I've never seen it directly with my eyes. Like I've never been, I always felt safe with police around. In my neighborhood, I feel safe when I see police around. It's not part of my daily existence to be afraid of police. And so I think the George Floyd video just really brought that home to a lot of white people.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
to a lot of people, just in general, I know some of my, of course, being a teacher, we have so many different friends from different places. And, some of my white counterparts were, I would say, oh my God, did you see like this happen? I would come to work and I would be devastated because I would just feel for like all the young Black males, our students
Mm-hmm.
who were walking around and nobody's talking about it, And I had a coworker that just said, oh no, I don't watch the news. I always watch the Disney Channel. And I was just like, why? This is not the time for Disney, like, but you can't really fault people that you only know what you know from exposure or from experience. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like our job to enlighten, educate one another on, you probably never know how it feels, but just being a human,
Yeah.
you think about, hey, I have friends that could have been their son or my son or, whatever it is. I think it's just really, it had a negative effect, but it also had a positive effect. I think it just really brought awareness forward to say, hey, these problems or these challenges that we're talking about is not us just talking,
Yeah.
because a lot of times people say, oh, you're always talking about race or you're always talking, but when you start seeing it for yourself, you're like, whoa, it is a problem. And it's unfortunate that it took so long and so many men and women
Yeah.
died before people are like, okay, wait, this is really a problem. This is really an issue. So when you start with your art, how was that? Like, what was your thinking when you're starting to design all these different arts, going into social justice and changing
Yeah.
art? What was your thinking like when you were in that moment, of doing your gift?
I think that moment was a watershed moment for a lot of people, white, Black, and otherwise. I think you kind of feel like this is a huge injustice. What can I do to contribute to the cause in some small way? And so my small way was by creating art and by amplifying the voices that need to be amplified in this struggle. A lot of my art pieces aren't really, it's not my voice, it's not my original. I don't believe I have a lot of original ideas, but what I like to do is I like to take someone else who has a great idea or a great quote, and then I'd like to create art from it. And the other thing I like to do on my account is to amplify different artists, and particularly BIPOC artists. And then my account just grew. Like people were really interested in this kind of art. I think like Instagram is a very visual based medium, isn't it? And Instagram, I think, has been great. It's great for education as well. Like all those 10-slide education things is wonderful. It's not, as I like to tell people, like don't depend on getting educated on Instagram. Like there's a lot more that you have to read, but it certainly is a good beginner course for a lot of people who are new to these issues. Sorry, something's wrong with my throat. So that whole George Floyd moment was the beginning of my journey into discovering more about my own personal biases and prejudices, and diving into a lot of unlearning. And I started reading. I've read so many books on the whole topic of oppression, and I've compiled a reading list. Actually, if any listeners are interested in looking on my Linktree again, I've compiled a whole list of some anti-racism resources for educators. It's a Google spreadsheet that I've been adding to whenever I find out something new or have a new resource to add. And so that was all part of my journey in the past year as well. I don't know if that answered your question.
It did.
Yeah.
And I'm taking notes on certain things that you're mentioning because I want to circle back to them.
Yeah.
I'm going all the way back to the fact around this time last year, when everything, all the fallout, you saw lots of people from the white communities that would become instantly supportive. There was a Tuesday sometime last year where everyone did the black square. See the black square, and then their life goes back to normal. So it's like, did you just do it for the fluff, for the notoriety, for this person is woke, or did you do it because you have a desire to see and bring about change? So lots of those people you saw went back to their normal life.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, and then I look at yourself, and you're continuing. So just in looking at that, as Dr. Hobson mentioned earlier about your support system, people around you, like how did they respond in that during that time? What would you say has helped you to be consistent? And what are some of the long-term goals or visualizations that you hope to come because of you being consistent in this space?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to say that, again, my connection with the other social justice artists kind of keeps me motivated, because they're always bringing up, hey, did you hear about this? And should we create some art about that? And so that kind of keeps me going. And I have to say that sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I just have to shut down social media, because there are so many inequities in the world, and it's easy to become overwhelmed by it all, isn't it? And so I might do some art about like an anti-gun legislation, or the violence against the API community, and then something else will come up, and then something else will come up, and then someone else will be killed, and then someone else will be beaten up. And at times it keeps me going, but it can also be overwhelming. And I think a lot of people on Instagram are feeling the same way. Like you're motivated to keep going because there's so much injustice out there, but at the same time you have to learn how to turn it off, because it can be too much. So I would say that what keeps me going really well is reading the newspaper every day, is watching the news every day. Like there's so many things that are going on in the world that aren't just not right. And my way of contributing in my very small ways by creating art about it.
Yeah, and there's so much you say in your very small way, and so many people will discredit the impact that one individual can have. And you have to understand that that one individual, there's another one individual and another one individual. And as a collective, that's when we make the massive impacts.
Absolutely. And I did a drawing about that. And I think the drawing was something like, everyone has influence. Like even someone with 10 followers has influence, because someone is going to see your post and then they might have, 100 followers and they might repost it. And that's how social media works, right? And so anyone who says, well, I don't post about that stuff because who cares? Like, who's going to see my feed? Doesn't understand how we are all in this together. We have to, it
takes but one drop to, make a massive ripple effect.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One more thing that you mentioned, and it takes me back to a story that I remember when I was in graduate school. There was a young lady in my cohort that was from South Carolina. She was in a very rural, very isolated part of South Carolina. So she came to the University of Southern Miss to work on her master's degree. This was right around the time where there was a big debate about the Confederate emblem on the Mississippi flag. And we at our university, we did a demonstration in front of the university, and they took it down. They took the flag down at our university, and that kind of started the process of changing the state flag. Anyways, we were in class, and she was like, "So what's the whole thing about this flag, the Mississippi flag, the whole issue?" She was completely oblivious of the things that had been going on.
We're talking about a white person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, that in turn, it shows that what you don't know until you know.
But what else does it show though, Brian?
Ignorance,
it's personal ignorance, but also what's our school system teaching? Like if she doesn't know
nothing at all,
if she doesn't know how offensive that flag is, there's a problem in our education system.
Exactly. Way
up.
Yeah. And the thing is, once she had the desire to learn, and once she actually learned, she started to go back home and educate her husband, telling him things, and not that he didn't know, but she's bringing a different perspective. She's helping him understand it from the perspective of African American people who she was never around before she came to Southern Miss. So, the fact that people are vulnerable enough to say, I wasn't exposed to it, so I really didn't know, but now that I do know, I'm going to do something about it. And
sure.
I admire that so heavily.
But it also, anti-racism starts at home, right? Like it starts at the dinner table. Like you don't have to read a ton of books to know that when Uncle Harry says a racist joke, that you need to step in and say, that's not cool, and this is why it's not cool. So people who think like, how can I contribute to the anti-racism movement, just start having these conversations at home, just very, very basic conversations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of, what you're saying. We talk about education always. I mean, you've been an educator too, so the conversations. It's about the kids, it's about the students, it's about and it's like with all this stuff going on, there has been absolutely nothing. I might have heard of one school district that has, focused on the Black community, your Black teachers, your Black students, never saying, hey, what can we do to help? It's just like business as usual. Hey, I know you guys got a lot going on, but we need you to worry about this test, or, teachers are just showing up to work. And I just, remember it's always been a small group of Black teachers at schools that I was at, except for a while back. But I just know that every chance we got, we were crossing in the hallways and we would just be devastated. It's like, how do they expect us to teach in this? You know, it's like we are just mentally just exhausted, you know. But it's like, it was almost one of those things. It's like race is something you just don't talk about in school. You know, you just avoid it at all means, you know, just avoid it. And I brought this up last week. It's like we will avoid the conversation about racism, but we won't avoid the conversation about, you know, what is it, the LBGT? I don't even know what it's called, but you know, we are more open to talk about that in schools and create safe places for those students than we are for students of color. And I just wonder, you know, and I was asking the guest that last week, is why what is your opinion on why are we more comfortable with having those conversations than we are about creating a safe place, or and when I say safe, I mean just where kids can feel, or even teachers feel like, hey, they get it. You may not understand me totally, but you get it. You know, so why do you think the school system is more open to one and not the other?
I think it comes down to leadership. I think it's whatever, you know, schools are a hierarchy, right? And so if the person at the top is not on board with anti-racism, then it's not going to trickle down. Unless you have a very powerful group of teachers who insist and fight for it on a daily basis, but that's exhausting. So I think the schools that have embraced anti-racism, it's because they have a strong leader who really believes in it. And the schools that don't, it's because the leadership is lacking. That's what I think it is.
Yeah. And one of our guests last week, she had mentioned that she believes that it's more acceptable because a lot of people who are advocates for, you know, the LBGT or whatever, most of them are always, you know, white males, white women. So they're more able to talk about those conversations than they are about race. And so that was her perspective, which made a lot of sense, you know, as well. But people, even as a teacher, and I'm sure, you know, you have a voice, but you don't have a voice. And you know, even with Black teachers or Black students, it's like we say that we can express how we feel, and but once you get labeled, you know, a lot of times when we are expressing, you know, hey, we're bothered about these situations, or, you know, we just feeling, like you said, overwhelmed, it's looked at as you're not a team player, you have a lot of going on, you're not able to function at work, you're not suitable to be a teacher, you know. And now it's turning into, now you can't do your job because you can't handle or balance what the world has going on and what you're supposed to be doing in here. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like you have a voice, but you don't. You look at even like the NFL, you know, it's like if you take a knee, you're going to get fined. But, you know, so it's kind of like this bias of like, you know, you have a voice, but if you use your voice, there's going to be a consequence. So are you willing to take a pay cut? Are you willing to lose your job? Are you willing to be labeled? Are you willing to be blackballed? You know, do you believe in what you're saying enough, you know,
to risk all that?
To risk it, because you're going to risk it.
It's a huge risk, isn't it? And that's the predicament that a lot of teachers are in, for sure. I'm retired from teaching, so I can't speak to that directly. So if I was in my school right now, I sure would want to be involved in some kind of an anti-racism policy creating committee. So I'm not even sure what's going on in my old school. I think a lot of administrators are also saying, like, especially in neighborhoods that are predominantly white, is that, well, racism isn't a problem in our school. You know, we have like 5 Black kids and they're all happy, not realizing that.
That's exactly what they say. Look at everybody, they're having a good time.
Right. Not realizing, A, that those kids probably aren't very happy if you were actually to talk to them. But B, the anti-racism skills that have to be taught to teachers and students are skills that they're going to be able to use in a lifetime. You know, being how to talk about anti-racism at the dinner table, how to talk to their own children about racism. So that argument doesn't wash either. But I just can't speak directly. I understand what you're saying. I've heard other teachers talk about it because I'm not actually in a school right now. I can't speak to it directly as to how to deal with those kinds of issues. But yeah, it takes dedicated. It really, if it's not coming from above, if it's not coming from the leader, it takes a group of really dedicated teachers to insist that work gets done.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, you know, a lot of the educators or Black educators are just so exhausted from their personal life that it's just like you're just clocking in and clocking out at that point.
Yeah, I believe it.
What are you doing? I know that you said in Canada you guys are still on lockdown. So as far as you getting out there and really being able to voice, you know, it's important for social media for you because that is your way of expanding, you know, to the masses because of, you know, you're kind of in lockdown. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like what has been your conversation, even just like with your, if you know anybody in your family who's still in school, or, you know, is anybody bringing any conversations to you, like, you know, within your circle of people saying like, hey, this is too much, or what are you doing, or questioning you? Do you feel like you've been pretty supported when it comes to where you're going, you know, for where you've been?
Yeah. I've had mixed reactions to the change in my account for sure. My friends and family are all supportive, of course, but I know that teachers who were following me previously aren't following me anymore. It's like, what, you know, they're just not interested in the content that I'm creating anymore, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Like, I don't create content so that people follow me. I create it because that's the way I express myself. And whether you want to follow me or not, it's irrelevant. So that's sort of my opinion on that. And what was the question again? I've lost my train of thought.
So I was just talking about, you know, was there anybody in your immediate family or friends that you know who have students who are still in school?
Oh, right. Actually, no, I don't. My children are all grown and they're not in school anymore. And so I have very little contact with, and I'm not a grandmother yet, so I have very little contact with people who actually still have children in school. So I can't.
So what has your conversation been like with your children? Like, you know, your kids like, Mom, what happened, or what are you doing, or is it something that your kids were always aware? Because I feel like the younger generation is not as bad as, you know, of course, the older generation, just because they're having to, you know, being involved in sports, and now everything is, you know, things are not segregated like it used to be. So they're kind of learning how to adapt with one another a little bit more. The kids that are still talking crazy and reckless, like you said, it was because when you start talking to that kid, you realize, oh, his mama talks like that at home, or his dad says stuff like that at home. You use the N-word at home, you know. But when they're, for the most part, a lot of the younger generation don't quite understand, just because they're all in the mix of friends and they think, hey, we're all friends, we don't see any problem. But it's usually us that are like, hey, there's a problem going on out here. So how's your conversation been with your children in reference to what, you know, what's going on, or just the space that you're in now?
So I have one daughter who actually lives in New Zealand. So I don't see a whole lot of her, although we FaceTime as much as possible. And she's loved my content because they have a whole Maori community in New Zealand. And this is the indigenous community in New Zealand. And she uses my drawings. She shares them with her colleagues at school, and they all talk about these issues as well. And so I have a big fan club at her school, which is wonderful. She's a teacher as well. And my other daughter here in Canada, she's 30. So I've got a 28-year-old in New Zealand. I've got the 30-year-old. And she also has been enjoying my content and sharing it with her friends. So I feel proud of the fact that they're sort of seeing this new side of me that they didn't realize before, that this was something that I was interested in, and they're sharing the content with their friends, and they're having these conversations, and they're reading the books I'm recommending. And so that's had a really, really positive impact in my family. It's given us a whole other area to talk about as well, besides the stuff that we normally talk about. So, and even my mother who's 85 years old is like, wow, I had no idea this was going on. And thanks for letting me know about this and your wheel of privilege. Have you seen my wheel of privilege? That's something that people have been talking about. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really promotes a lot of conversations as well. Like
Wow.
a lot of people who go, what are you talking about? Privilege? I'm not privileged. And then you pull out this wheel that I put together with my sister. Actually, I was visiting her, and we put together this wheel. We were sharing ideas. And you look at this wheel. And so basically the listeners, if you don't know what this wheel is, it's a wheel of privilege that I drew somewhat based on another wheel I saw online, but I've added to it. And at the very center is power. And on the edges is marginalization. So so the center is privilege and power. So and then there's different categories. And so let me just pull it up so we can actually talk about this. Do we have more time to talk about this? Is this okay? Are we running out of time?
No, you're good.
Yeah, okay. Because I think this is a really important conversation, because a lot of people who say, what are you talking about privilege? I'm not privileged, So at the center of the wheel of power, you've got property. So do you own property? If you own property, you have power and you have privilege. Physical. So if you are skinny as a female, you have power and privilege. Your mental health. If you have robust mental health, you have, you're at the center. So there's all these categories that a lot of people will go, well, I'm not privileged. Well, yeah, look at this wheel of power. And so if you're watching or you're listening, just Google Wheel of Power Privilege by Sylvia Duckworth, and you'll find it. And people who come across this wheel say it really promotes some good conversations with people who feel like they don't have power.
I remember there was a study they did a while back where they lined people up, and it was like, take a step if you've experienced this. Take a step.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remember, some of the people were looking back like, they haven't moved.
I love that video, but it's also, I've been told it can traumatize people who actually are participating in that activity.
Absolutely.
And so it's actually, I've heard it's not recommended to do. It used to be something, and now educators in particular are not doing it with their students, because, who wants to be the student at the very back who hasn't taken any steps forward? But it is a great exercise for sure.
Right.
Maybe
I think that's when people it was just like that initial exercise that people started to notice, like, okay, wait, so there is a problem. But like you said, it does create a division, when you're the person that's way up front.
Yeah.
Behind you, like, the way I felt about you, now I feel different about you, because we have nothing to talk about. And then the people, that haven't taken a step, they're thinking like, oh my God, like, these are people I've been friends with, and I've never even acknowledged that they were feeling this way. So it does
I think it's a great
negative side.
I think it's a wonderful video that should be used as a resource. And I just say, use caution if you're actually going to do the exercise with a group of people, for sure.
Like a disclaimer in the beginning, like, hey, this is just to bring awareness and not necessarily, so that's a great
It's just, I think it can be embarrassing for people who are way in the back. It could be not a very pleasant moment, I would think.
I'm going to share a link to that. I just pulled it up for myself, but the whole embarrassment component, it was 2018 when I did a similar exercise as it pertains to savings account.
Mm-hmm.
And one was to line up. If you have at least this amount of your savings account, take a step forward. Take a step forward. And I was one of the ones in the back. Like, I was able to step forward the initial time. Thankfully, I have a pretty strong, thick skin as it pertains to, my emotional regulation. But some people would really, feel down on themselves and be traumatized by those types of exercises. So really understanding the dynamics of those who you're doing the exercise with, I feel it's so powerful. And we've had, on the past 2 weeks, I believe, we've had conversations around privilege and how understanding privilege is so important to know that whatever type of privilege you have, we can go to white privilege, we can go to intellectual privilege, we can go to whatever type of privilege, knowing how to use it for good and not allow it to sit stagnant and cause inaction to be your indirectly using it for bad.
Absolutely.
Listening to the dialogue that you're able to have with your mother and your daughters, it brightens my heart, because lots of individuals, once they get into their 50s, 60s, so on and so forth, they're set in their way. Like, whatever they knew to be true to them prior, they don't care to learn anything new. But you allowing this rebirth of you seeing the world through a different lens, and then your dialogues about that with your surroundings, that's what it's all about. And that's why we wanted someone like you to be on this podcast, to let people know, look, you can be part of the solution. Be that change, and then talk about it.
Absolutely. So that document, the Google Doc I was telling you about with all the resources that I've been collecting and reading, I also have a list of people on Instagram that you should follow if you're interested in anti-racism, and in particular if you're an educator. So I recommend that listeners also check that out. Again, it's on my link tree, and it's called let's see, some anti-racism resources for educators.
I'm just so grateful, when you talked about, it's like something that you may seem like Brian was saying earlier, as being small. You're doing a major thing, and I just definitely want you to continue to operate in your space. And I think that one of the great things about you that people can learn is that sometimes we think in order to make an influence or an impact or whatever, it has to be something, like, whoa, oh my gosh, major, if we all just learn how to operate in our own space, our own gift, everybody learns to operate in that, it will be something big. So looking at your art, like I'm learning more how to be more, appreciate more artists, because usually I'm the person that'll see something, oh, that's nice. Or I'll see something, be like, I don't know what that is. Like, what is that? Because that wasn't my background, so it was until I started to speak to people who were in my circle, who were artists, to say, well, do you see this? Or this color means this, or this means, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I would have never known, so something that we think is small in our space is really a big deal. So I just want you to know that what you're doing is amazing, and how you have used your gift to educate is amazing. And so we definitely need more people, like you, that are comfortable operating in their space and are okay with those who follow and those who don't follow, because that's the key. Some are going to drop off. I mean, some people of our own drop off for whatever.
Sure.
Like, hey, you got a lot of Black people that I know that may be in corporate America, and they're so high, it's like, I don't have time for that, or whatever it is. And that's okay. But when your truth doesn't change. And so I'm just so grateful that you weren't one of the people that decided, okay, we're done. I'm exhausted. I'm done with this. That you're continuing to educate yourself, and sharing your gift, because your gift is, I mean, when I look at your art, and I look at the other artists that you've connected with, I'm just like, wow. I mean,
Yeah.
amazing. I'm a stick figure type of girl. You know, I can draw. My stuff is horrible. My handwriting is horrible. My drawing is horrible. My painting is horrible. But I do appreciate good artists when I see them, and it's just, you never know what that person is feeling until you get to talk to them, and that's why it's so important that, you know, you have that content attached to your art, so that it really helps us who, you know, are a little ignorant to art, get a little bit of understanding, and you get to spread, you know, some good knowledge. So I appreciate you. The Black Podcast appreciates you. And so just continue and operating your gift, because you're doing it very well.
Well, thanks for having me. I just want to remind everyone that they really need to follow everyone, all these social justice artists that are on this guide. Remember, I was struggling with, what was that category called on Instagram? It's called guides. Have you seen that? When you can upload a guide. Anyway, it's a guide by Kim Sara, and I have it on my link tree. So it's 30 social justice artists on Instagram. And if listeners or viewers want to tap on that link in my link tree, and then they'll have lots more social justice artists that they can follow and continue to promote their work. So thank you for having me. It was lovely chatting with you. And like I said, I've been spending a lot of time learning how to decenter myself, and so I feel awkward when the conversation is around me. But I'm really grateful that you found that I had something to offer to your audience. So thank you for having me.
Awesome.
And, you know, she keeps making reference to her link tree. She has the most extensive link tree I have ever seen, chock full of resources. So definitely check that out if you're in the social justice space. Check out her link tree. You know, and just to kind of close us out, whenever you finish whatever career you're currently in, and this is speaking to the audience, take her as an example. Don't let that be the end of the impact that you make here on earth, because she's making a complete different impact now, but her previous life, her profession in the education space, it contributes to what it is that she's doing now. So never stop. Stop moving forward, finding a new passion and a reason to live. And off of that note, Sylvia.
Now, I do want you to do one thing before we let you go.
Mm-hmm.
If you could say, if you can leave the audience with one thing, what would it be?
Oh, yes, never too late to learn. And the other saying I love is, you don't know how much you don't know. Yeah, that's the saying. You don't know how much you don't know. And the more you learn about it, the more you realize how little you know. So keep on learning.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to put you in the backstage, and then we're going to close you out.
Okay.
So thank you, Ms. Duckworth. And I think we have your social media up, so please make sure you support her and go look at all her art and the people that she's supporting. And so let's just keep it going. And we want to thank you again for being on the Black Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Right.
Wow. Y'all better share this video. That's all I got to say. It's just amazing to see her in her space. I know that when we initially started talking to her, when I first reached out to her, she was like, sure. And I think that was just a big step for everyone, you know, even for us, you know, bringing other people to the Black Podcast, because that's what it's about. It's about not just learning from each other, but learning from everyone. Everyone can help. Everyone can contribute. And the fact that people, whether they're white or Asian or whoever, they acknowledge that there is an issue. And it's unfortunate that sometimes it takes one of them to say, hey, this is an issue, for it to be like, okay, now it's an issue. But it's important, because we need everyone to acknowledge that the things that the Black community are facing, or in particular Black men, is a problem, and it's a problem for everyone. And so I just appreciate her and her gift. And like she said, some people fell off. Some people decided they didn't want to support her, and she's still okay with that. And so that is an amazing thing. And I just loved having Ms. Duckworth here. She was just great.
Yes, I agree. I love being around educators because that's the population that I work side and side with. And that's what's needed. We need that collective, that village for our young people. And on the flip side, it's never too late to learn. It is never too late to learn. So always be finding a way to learn something new that's going to help you make a better contribution to the world around you. So
And she's done a lot of learning for us. She's given
I
us
know,
all the
right?
links and the people, so you really don't have to do too much. She's
Just
already
go to her
put
link
it out
tree.
there. So just go to her link tree and you'll find out other artists that you can follow. You can find different books that she's read, different topics. I mean, please, the fact that she's taking her time and using her personal time to educate people, you know, hey, you don't have to go looking through the library. She'd already done put the link on there. So go to her link tree. We have it right here. Sylvia Duckworth. Go to her YouTube. It has all her information on there, and check out her art. You'll be surprised what you will see. I mean, she has some major stuff on there that I don't know. I don't know if we talked about whether it's for sale or not, or if she's selling anything, but
Yeah, follow up with us. We'll
follow
definitely
up and see. Hey, she may paint you something, and you know you could pay her a couple of dollars or something. I don't know, but I don't know if we just started something for her. But we want to thank everyone here. Thank everyone, our audience, for supporting the Black Podcast, and don't forget we're here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Time. Continue to learn, continue to share. We love you, and make sure you subscribe to our organization. So we are. What is it? We are HSBA. So please make sure you go to our website and find out more what we're doing outside of the Black Podcast on a bigger space. But the Black Podcast is a part of that. So we are hsba.com. Make sure you subscribe so that you get the newsletters and know how you can contribute, whether donating or being a volunteer or a sponsor or whatever. So find out how you can help contribute to the change and help support our community and the things that we're doing. So check us out. And I think that is it, B.
That's it for today, but we'll be back same place, same time next week. Y'all go out and have a safe remainder of your week. Keep on doing the good work and speaking your piece when you see some injustice going on. Off that note, y'all take care and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.